A tech giant once funded a $100,000 lawsuit against an American town just to stop them from publishing a single number. That number was exactly how much of the town's drinking water the company was secretly evaporating. The town was the Dalles, Oregon. The company was Google. The city sued its own local newspaper to bury the figure, and Google funded the fight, spending over $100,000. They lost. The number came out. In a single year, Google's data centers there used 355.1 million gallons of water, roughly 29% of the entire city's supply. And it wasn't the size of the number that landed hardest. It was that the number was violently accelerating. It had nearly tripled in a decade, and the AI arms race hadn't even started yet. The AI you use every day does not live in a cloud. It lives inside a massive, sweating physical engine, and to understand why it drinks, you have to look at the physics. Every time you start a short AI session, around 10 to 50 medium responses, the servers behind it generate immense heat. To cool those servers, the data center evaporates roughly 500 milliliters of fresh water. A standard water bottle, permanently vaporized, and it scales violently. Training the GPT-3 model in Microsoft's US facilities evaporated roughly 700,000 liters of water on site. But when these companies report how much water they use, they lean on a deliberate linguistic trick. Most industrial plants take water and return it to the river. That's a withdrawal. Data centers are different. They rely on evaporative cooling. As air passes over the water to chill the servers, roughly 70 to 80% of it is lost to evaporation. It's consumed, gone, never returned to the river. So when a company reports its water withdrawals, it's hiding the story. Consumption is the number that matters. That gap between what's withdrawn and what's consumed has a devastating physical cost. In Newton County, Georgia, one family found out exactly what it looks like. The Morris family's well had given them water for decades. Then, Meta built a $750 million data center roughly 1,000 feet away. Within months, the family's taps ran dry. The residents blame the data center. Meta disputes it and commissioned a study calling its role unlikely. But the physics of the site are hard to ignore. The family spent roughly $30,000 to replace the well. The Meta facility uses roughly 500,000 gallons a day, about 10% of the entire county's capacity. Over 2 years, local water rates rose about 33%. The county is projected to hit a water deficit by 2030, and this infrastructure is expanding globally. When a hyperscale data center collides with a natural crisis, the result starts to look a lot like pillage. In 2023, Montevideo, Uruguay suffered its worst drought in roughly 74 years. The capital neared day zero. As the taps began to fail, citizens looked at a proposed Google facility. Critics estimated it would use 2 million gallons a day, as enough for 55,000 people. Thousands marched. Their slogan was simple: "This is not drought, it is pillage." If you zoom out from the individual towns, the macro numbers get genuinely frightening. In 2023, U.S. data centers consumed roughly 17 billion gallons of water directly just for cooling. By 2028, that direct use could double, even quadruple, to as much as 34 to 68 billion gallons. You can track it in their own filings. Microsoft's consumption rose roughly 22% from 2022 to 2023. Meta's withdrawals hit roughly 1.03 billion gallons, up 7%, with withdrawals in high water stress areas jumping 20%. And in 2024, Google reported consuming roughly 8.1 billion gallons, a 28% spike in a single year. They are scaling at a velocity the ground literally cannot support. The tech giants know exactly how this looks. So they engineered a single, reassuring corporate metric to calm the public, being net water positive. Google says it replenished roughly 64% of its 2024 consumption, and it's targeting 120% by 2030, more water returned than it takes. It's an accounting answer to a physics problem, but water cannot be teleported. It is not fungible across basins. A gallon a company funds to restore a river in South America does absolutely nothing for the well going dry in Georgia. A firm can be truthfully net water positive on a global spreadsheet, while the exact county it sits in slides toward a permanent deficit. And the citing logic is perverse. To build a hyperscaler, you want cheap land, cheap power, tax breaks, and dry air. Dry air makes evaporative cooling more efficient, so the industry is pulled directly toward the most water-stressed places on Earth. And because water is drastically underpriced almost everywhere, the price never tells the machines to stop. The cheapest place to compute is the worst place for water. But if you think 17 billion gallons is the ceiling, you're only looking at the cooling towers. That's just the direct use. Every megawatt these facilities pull off the grid takes water to generate back at the power plant. In 2023, U.S. data centers consumed roughly 201 billion gallons of water indirectly when through their electricity. More than 12 times their direct use. The water you just watched evaporate is the small number. The big one is hiding at the power plant. And the grid is about to break.